What's up, guys, man? It's Rich back yet again. So, yeah, folks, Spider-Man, the movie that came out in 2002. Yeah, definitely. If you do love any kind of Spider-Man related topics or comic books, or just like nerd stuff, anything like that, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe on this video. So yes, as you can see by my Richitron, sorry Jericho, I'm gonna call it the Richitron. I'm a huge fan of Spider-Man. After Batman, Spider-Man has always been my favorite, secondary favorite superhero. And man, I just always loved the idea of like a guy who was bit by a radioactive spider, who can now climb walls, who can shoot webs out of his hands, and now can fight crime. And what I always loved with Spider-Man is that he was different from the other superheroes such as Batman, Superman, Thor, Captain America. He was one who was a very relatable because he was like the youth. He was like a teenage, like late teens, depending on like which kind of comic you read of Spider-Man. He was the late teens and he was fighting crime as Spider-Man. When the Spider-Man 2002 movie came out, it was a super big deal because if you check like my other reviews, that I've talked like a bit about superhero films. I mentioned a bit of this in the mask. Is that when the Spider-Man film came before, the only big superhero movies that actually were able to make money in the box office and create a franchise was the Batman and Superman movies. The Superman movie that was released in 1978 with Christopher Reeve was a huge, not even just like financial success, but it's a huge innovation on seeing a superhero translate into film successfully, which hadn't been seen before at this time. Then almost like a decade after, the Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, which brought Batman to that dark, broody, how he was originally intended to be made by like Bob Kane and Bill Finger, Tim Burton was able to translate that onto the big screen. So with the Batman and Superman movies, once they both came out, they were all able to follow like a franchise, which I say for both of them, like the first ones were successful. Superman, I've always loved Superman 2, and I've always loved Batman Returns, regardless of what they say. But when like the third and fourth films came out of the franchise, they both went wah. So there was a time being from the 90s that superhero films weren't the norm. There's like superhero films that were actually good, and to bring like people to come to the cinema, it wasn't happening. Wesley Snipes' Blade, which just happened to be one of the first Marvel pictures produced, that came out in the late 90s. I already gave my thoughts on the Spawn, film adaptation. Love the animated series, but the film adaptation, could strike that out. It wasn't until the early 2000s where like basically the Marvel film. So like catching off the success of Blade, very important films that got released was like the X-Men film came out, I believe it was 2000. This is the history for the Spider-Man film. At the time this came out, I was in like the first year of high school. Keep in mind in 2000s, you didn't have the luxury of like even TVs such as this. You didn't have HD, you didn't have like MPC. We were back in the day, we had MP3 players and DVD players. So at the time, Spider-Man film, I always remember this. I actually had an Amigo, so I was in this first year of high school, freshy, and it was one of the seniors who was like great at I was able to get the bootleg version of like Spider-Man. So one of the seniors, I actually spoke to him and I said, man, can you get the Spider-Man film? Because like I don't think I'm gonna get to see this, especially the way my grades are. And I was successfully able to get this. And because of that, there was such a buzz in the air for this Spider-Man movie, and it was so cool. Even with the early trailers, they didn't really show so much of what was going to be in the movie. So I remember having the video, and it's like I watched it once, but word got out that I had the Spider-Man tape. This was a VHS cassette. So I started borrowing it to people, and like they borrowed it to people, and then the borrower borrowed it, kept on borrowing it out, So it went around in the circle of like the Spider-Man VHS cassette I had in high school, just going around. But to be honest, I could honestly understand like why it went around, because the movie, even to watch it even now, it is such a it's like a revolutionary film, you know. The film coming out at that time was such a big deal, humongous hype, you know. Like, this isn't like Godzilla hype where it never lived up to the expectations. No, Spider-Man 2002 definitely lived up to expectations. Tobey Maguire playing Peter Parker, Spider-Man. One thing I always loved, especially with the, you know, the superhero films in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, is they really stuck to what the comic book characters basically looked like, sounded like, and how appeared like. You know what I mean? They were true to what it was. You look at sometimes the movies now, I think again it's with the woke culture, and I'm not gonna go too much on this, but like they're not very, like I say, honest, you know, with like the certain portrayals of how the characters were based, you know, as you can see from a couple of these examples, you know. But I think Tobey Maguire, he captured what Peter Parker, the essence of Peter Parker, you know. He's socially awkward, he's a nerd, you know. He has like his love for the Aunt May, you know, and even the actress who plays Aunt May does this well, you know. The love that he has for Mary Jane, you know, him always trying to do the right thing, but it kind of bites him in the ass because he's over duties as Spider-Man, you know. So the balancing of like Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and I think Tobey Maguire played it well, you know. Those scenes, you know, I can relate to this so well, you know, like getting in high school, you know, and just like not getting along with people, you know, being socially awkward and just basically being a nerd. Seeing like a Tobey Maguire playing Pete, you know, you see how like low he is at the bottom of the food chain, and then how he's able to then transform into, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. You know, that guy to the end of the film, it's a complete like all, you know, change, super transformation. At that time especially, I don't think there was anyone who could play Peter Parker / Spider-Man as well as Tobey Maguire did. You know, I heard that he even took like some like kind of martial arts, you know, to kind of get the flexibility and like the agility that Spider-Man has, you know. And what I like and love with this is like this was at a time that CGI wasn't overly heavily used, so this film relies more on like practical effects, you know. When you see kind of Spider-Man, especially in the close shots, like, you know, web slinging, you know, to ascend, you know, it's like ropes of wire that are holding him up, you know. Even the scene like when he's down and it's like that, you know, famous, you know, the most popular notable kiss when he's upside down and he kisses Mary Jane. They stick to more practical effects. They only use CGI when it's needed, and I really love, you know, Sam Raimi's approach to this. And you know, Sam Raimi, who I'll just like interject in, I think he did an incredible job for this, you know, for like his first like, you know, big kind of superhero film. Came out much needed time. Now moving on to like Kirsten Dunst, you know, playing Mary Jane Watson. I'll be honest, I didn't see Kirsten Dunst in too much films before this. I think she appeared in a few like say like romantic comedy movies, you know, at that time. That's exactly what Mary Jane looks like, you know. If you've seen Kirsten Dunst, you know, I'm not even just saying the hair, but even just like her mannerisms, you expect like that's how Mary Jane should be like in a live action film. She is at the beginning of the films. Then when you see how Peter Parker, Tobey Maguire transcends and they become more of like an item, you know, at the, you know, at next, especially like going towards, you know, the end of the film, you know, like you know, they become a, you know, couple, you know what I mean? So you just see more of the relationship, you know. And I think like, I'm not saying it's a strong chemistry between, you know, Tobey Maguire, Peter Parker, and Kirsten Dunst, Mary Jane, but there is something there, you know. You can kind of believe they are in a relationship together, and they actually they do genuinely care for each other. But William Dafoe playing Norman Osborn, and you got James Franco playing Harry Osborn, you know, so the Osborns, you know. I really do love the casting of Norman Osborn, William Dafoe. These are the fans of Spider-Man, you know. Green Goblin has always been like the arch nemesis of Spider-Man. It's basically been like the Joker to Batman, the Lex Luthor to Superman, you know. He's like the big bad guy for Spider-Man, you know. I think in some publications like Doc Ock and Venom are like the close ones next to them, probably like the second and third respectively. And it's funny, like they appear in the sequels after, which I'm going to talk about later. But I do love William Dafoe as Green Goblin, especially for the time being. there is some kind of trinklets, little kind of sprinkles of like Jack Nicholson's Joker in the first Batman film, '89. Because I've always figured like Joker and Green Goblin very similar, characters, and I do feel like William Dafoe like lends a certain likeness to that Jack Nicholson's epic portrayal of the Clown Prince of Crime in the Batman 1989 film. It's an origin story for both of them. Do you understand? Like, it's not just like how the Batman film just focused on pretty much the Joker's origin, and Batman was more mysterious and into the shadows. In this film, it shows the origin of Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire. They go on that school outing trip, and then, he gets, attacked by that spider, and then, he soon starts to find that he gets his powers. In this one, it shows that Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, he had like these kind of issues with like his company, and he actually volunteers to do this kind of testing, like Goblin Green, like something that's injected to then like enhance himself. They were going to use this for this like soldiers, genome soldiers, but he ends up like putting it inside him, and he gets. So it cuts very well of showing the origin of Peter Parker turning into Spider-Man and Norman Osborn turning into Green Goblin. And then you've got like everybody's lovable friend, Harry Osborn, played by James Franco. James Franco, as Kirsten Dunst, this was the first time I'd seen James Franco, I didn't mention before, Tobey Maguire I saw in a film called Pleasantville, and I always knew he was good buddies with Leonardo DiCaprio. So again, like I was someone who was big into like reading like movie magazines, like Empire, and there was one called a Cineplex. This was back in the UK. But with James Franco, again, I think he was a great addition into this film. Like his role is not as big as you see in the second film, and especially the third film, of course. But I think he's very believable as like how Harry Osborn is. If you have read the comics and even seen the '90s series, the 90s animated Spider-Man series, you can kind of be like, okay, yeah, I can see James Franco as Harry Osborn, and I think he does terrific. The best casting of the film, and this one, especially for the Sam Raimi trilogy, and I think he doesn't get mentioned so much, it's definitely J.K. Simmons as John Jonah Jameson. Man, oh man, you gotta understand, like in the 90s, not only like I watched, we completely watched the Spider-Man animated series, from like Spider-Man. Not only that one, I also had the Spider-Man game for PlayStation. So this was like about a couple years just before this movie came out. So I had that, and I also had Spider-Man 2 Enter the Electro. John Jameson actually appears in the first game when he's getting chased by Scorpion, and he's a big part of the series. When you see J.K. Simmons in the role of Jameson, I'm like, how did they get this actual animated form, character onto live action? I couldn't think of any better casting. He has the same mannerisms, same kind of character displays, like he hates Spider-Man, but yet Peter Parker's working for him. He treats Peter Parker like he's, nothing, and then when Spider-Man actually goes, and this actually happens in the series, he actually feels like remorse, he was like Spider-Man was a hero, then like he can't stand Spider-Man when he's there and he's doing the right thing, but when he actually goes away, he actually misses him, and I thought J.K. Simmons, of all the casting in Sam Raimi's of the whole trilogy, J.K. Simmons, without a doubt, is the best at casting. Pretty much, if anyone, knows the story of this, Peter Parker, as I said, he's based in New York, and in Queens, of course, he's someone who's been in love with Mary Jane, who actually lives next door to him. And he's someone who's like a lot of us are, he's just that lost teenage kid, I believe he's in this, he's got to be at least like anywhere from 16 to 18, so he's like late teens basically, and it's like the early scenes of like when he's going into school, he gets tripped up on the school bus, no one respects him, even the ones who are possibly getting bullied as well, no one respects him, he goes to school, Harry Osborn is pretty much his only amigo, and then when they actually have that school trip, he's taking pictures because like this is even before he was in the Daily Bugle, he had a love for photography, You know, he goes on this trip, and like a spider who actually escapes his pod that, you know, was radioactive, as his metamorphosis starts to begin. Where like Green Goblin and Spider-Man basically lie is Macy Grace. That time, you know, she's singing at this kind of parade festival in New York, you know, and like Green Goblin actually comes there to attack, you know, those ones who are trying to fuck up like Oscorp. And that's when Spider-Man comes in to, you know, save the day. And how Green Goblin sees Spider-Man is pretty much impressed of like, you know, his skills, you know, because he's the only one who has like these kind of powers such as him. So they like equals. You know, it's kind of like Rachel Golding. He can appreciate Spider-Man being this good guy, but he's like, your powers are for a waste. You know, you can do all of this, but no one will respect you. You know, as there's scenes in that, you know, when Peter reads the paper, you know, so this is now when he's transitioned and now he's working for the Daily Bugle. He's working for John Jameson, you know, he's got a job now. He's moved to the city. He's no longer living, you know, with his Aunt May. And he reads that paper, the bulletin paper, and it just says like, you know, Spider-Man did more harm than good, you know, and all of that, you know. So, and, you know, he does like bring a point, you know, sometimes you try to save everyone and they're still going to try to destroy you, even though you mean well. It's not always going to be good for your benefit. Some great action scenes, especially when like Spider-Man and Green Goblin are fighting. You know, I always love that scene when they're in that burning building, when Spider-Man's about to go in and rescue that baby, or like, you know, the few remaining survivors. And I believe he gets the baby out, and then Green Goblin, he was there like, you know, kind of tricking him, he was shouting, and he turns around and he just hits him, you know. And there's that cool scene where there's a scene like basically where they incorporate elements of the Matrix, where like Green Goblin is throwing his like, you know, his grenades and his blades, you know, his weapons, his arsenal. Spider-Man uses his agility and his spider powers to basically dodge it. You know, so Mary Jane now, she moved to the city. You know, her dream is to become an actress, just as it is in the comics and even in the TV series. I mean, the animated TV series. It doesn't go to plan because she ends up becoming a waitress, and then she starts dating Harry Osborn. You know, like kind of midway. You know, so this is when like, you know, Peter Parker, now Spider-Man is now like a thing now. You know, he's there doing that, and as Peter Parker, Mary Jane starts to get like a fondness for Peter. You understand? She starts to like, you know, basically, like, I wouldn't say fall in love, but she starts to get like fuss for him, and Harry can kind of see it. You know, there's one scene where basically Aunt May gets attacked by Green Goblin. One thing I've always loved with especially this Spider-Man film and also the Batman '89 film is the climax. It's the perfect balance of a good guy versus a bad guy, and the stakes are raised. So in this one, he gets set on the bridge, you know, and like Green Goblin has Mary Jane, you know, because he's super strict. He has Mary Jane, and he also has this like carriage of passengers, and he basically says, you know, we all make our choices and now choose. He throws both of them, and Spider-Man has to use his like quick agility and powers to basically save Mary Jane and these passengers, you know. But that setting, you know, of like, you know, seeing him and, you know, Green Goblin and Spider-Man, you know, and Spider-Man has to basically save them first before he can duel Green Goblin, was absolutely excellent. And then, man, like when Spider-Man actually saves them, Green Goblin actually uses like, which is like, you can see panels in the comics, so Green Goblin actually uses like a rope to catch Spider-Man, and they go to this like, I don't know if it's like kind of like this ancient relic graveyard, you know, but the set, you know, the location of where that was absolutely fantastic, you know. And Green Goblin and Spider-Man have this like fantastic final showdown where at the beginning Green Goblin is kicking the Jesus out of him, man, giving him elbows. He gives him like this kind of capoeira, like this spinning kick, and Spider-Man tries to put these webs and Green Goblin goes through him, and it looks like for a bit like he's no match for him, you know. But I think what really kind of like struck a nerve in Spider-Man was when Green Goblin actually says like, you know, I'm gonna actually get MJ, but I'm gonna take her nice and slow. And he says, me and MJ, we're gonna have a hell of a time. This actually enables like, you know, Spider-Man to transform, you know what I mean? He gets his powers back, he gets his strength, and it's like he had that kind of determination to not like lose his power, you know, because for a bit it looked like, you know, Green Goblin was gonna, you know, tell Spider-Man, and he didn't. And so Spider-Man uses his powers, uses himself, goes on the rampage, you know, to take out, you know, Norman Osborn. And it gets to a point that Norman Osborn actually kind of pleads. He's like, stop, 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 you know. And he takes off his mask and he reveals to Peter Parker, that he is, you know, Norman Osborn. You know, I'm Harry's dad. You know, but meanwhile he was trying to trick him. You know, he's Glider. So that was forgot to mention. He's Glider. He actually put it on auto, you know, pilot base. So like Parker was just in front of, just as I'm here now, like Norman Osborn was here and Parker was here, and he wanted to use the glider to reverse and strike him. Parker actually jumps from his spider sense. Spider-Man actually jumps all the way from his spider sense and it crashes right into Norman Osborn, you know, killing him. And his final words are, "Don't tell Harry." You know, so, you know, in the final scenes, you know, it shows like you know, Spider-Man coming back with Norman Osborn, and he drops him basically in the house. That scene at the end where you know, they're at the cemetery, you know, the graveyard, and it's like you see Norman Osborn's tombstone. He has to basically choose, you know what I mean? He has this choice of like he needs to focus on, you know, being Spider-Man. You know, great power comes great responsibility, you know, so he focuses on that. And I think Mary Jane always has this kind of inkling, like, is Peter Parker, you know, really Spider-Man? You know, and it walks into the you know, he walks into the camera, basically walks forward, and he basically like, you know, I'm Spider-Man. And you have these excellent shots just like this, you know, Spider-Man, you know, going around New York. And as I always do, let me talk about the soundtrack. You know, this is one of the soundtracks I actually had. Right. So the main theme for this was composed by like possibly one of the most legendary, impactful music composers is Danny Elfman. You know, he did the music for like Batman '89 and also Batman Returns and other. One of the tracks I always loved was Hero. You know, you had Hero by Chad Kroeger. You know, Chad Kroeger, which was a Canadian music artist. You know, he was a singer, songwriter, guitarist, you know, and he used to play for the rock band Nickelback, you know. And they say that they're here to save us. I'm not gonna stand here and wait. Oh, you know that one. You know, I even get goosebumps singing that. You know, you got like What We're All About, the original from Kerry King. Macy Gray. So Macy Gray was there when they're in the parade, and he was singing the My Nutmeg Fantasy. Baby, I know you got my nutmeg. I know you got some nutmeg. You know that one? My Nutmeg Fantasy. You know, you got Interjected, and Danny Elfman does the main titles, and you also got Aerosmith doing the main theme. And honestly, man, I can even say, when I even just talk about this music now, you know, the amazing track it has, it gives me such goosebumps, because I can remember those times of having the movie and just even the open titles, you know, when it shows like Columbia Pictures, you know, Columbia, and it shows like, you know, that kind of statue, you know, Liberty, you know, I believe it's, yeah, you know, the one that was done by Columbia Pictures, you know, that scene where like draws in, it's like, you know, you hear Danny Elfman's opening titles and you see the Marvel. It gives me mad goosebumps, man, because it's like I feel like such like just so listo, which means I'm ready, you know, to watch the superhero film, you know. So the soundtrack is, you know, I love it. All right.
It's time for another good idea, bad idea.
So guys, you know, before I give the final thoughts, I've actually introduced this new feature that I want to put in my reviews now. It's going to be called Good Idea, Bad Idea, which is going to be the positive points and the negative points, you know. The positive and negatives. So, the good stuff you can say about Spider-Man, you know, I would definitely say the cast is splendid. You know, I think each character, if you read the comic books or you have grown up, especially with the 90s animated series, you would expect that's how you would see the portrayal of the characters on screen. You know, I do love the ultimate battle, you know, as I said, because I'm such a fan of the Batman '89. Seeing like the good in Spider-Man, you know, versus the bad in Green Goblin, it really mirrored the Batman '89 movie, you know, which I think was great. I think another best positive of this film is relatability. You know, for anyone who is a nerd such as myself, who was, social awkward. He was not the popular guy. You can really relate to those early scenes when you see Peter Parker, getting tripped over on the bus, getting stuff thrown at him, getting like just barged, and he's just that loner, not by choice. He means well. He has that nice guy tendencies that all of us dogs have. And he's in love with a girl which is just way out in his league, just because of the dynamics of where he is in high school. And then when you see him kind of leave high school, he gets the job in the Daily Bugle. He's able to use these talents that he has as photography. He's able to go there and he's able to use even the job, basically like he can now be like Spider-Man's like actual personal photographer. It works well, and it just reinforces that, high school and all that is halftime. It's when you graduate and you actually get your real job. That's when life is that is when life has real meaning. So I could relate to that. And I would say about the negatives to Spider-Man, say possibly the biggest one, and I've seen like other reviewers and YouTubers say this, it definitely has to be the suit that Green Goblin has. I'm not, obviously not the only one who says this, but like it does look like something from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series. It was strange, especially growing up in the Spider-Man animated series, and then playing the games and reading some of the comics, seeing him in that. I wouldn't say it was just a disappointment, but it would have been nice to see him how he originally looks. There's obviously people know like of the test footage of what they wanted to make how Green Goblin before, then they went for this kind of stylized look, to sell, But that being said, I don't think the performance of Willem Dafoe hinders it. Willem Dafoe still is, he's a fantastic actor and he still does well. It's just that suit, a bad idea. To a lot of people, as like, Christopher Reeve is Superman and Michael Keaton will always be Batman, especially to me. Tobey Maguire is Spider-Man to me, and I think some people don't appreciate how good his portrayal is because he's more believable. I think that's one thing Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland don't really have, that believability. Like, how impactful, as I said, this was the film that you could say at a time that superhero films were the biggest deal. As a man film had not come out and been so impactful, so successful, so over, so like exceed like a lot of people's expectations, just a fantastic superhero movie. I don't think you get this whole MCU or DCU universe. Yeah, folks, who would I recommend Spider-Man 2002? The generation for the ones who grew up in the 90s or personally, maybe like the early 90s or even like the late, basically the 90s, I think this is the Spider-Man for them. I'm guessing like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is for like the 2000s, people who were born in the 2000s, and then Tom Holland's are for the 2010s. So I think every generation's got a Spider-Man. I think for guys who came up in the 90s, this Spider-Man would definitely suit them. And yeah, anyone who's read the Spider-Man comics and watched the 90s animated series, which I think is one of the best animated series, one of the best, definitely stop what you're doing, go watch this now, So yeah, folks, that is my review on Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man. My final score for this, I'm gonna actually give this 4 out of 5. I think it's much due. Now it's your turn. Let me know what you think about 2002 Spider-Man Raimi's excellent superhero films. Thank you as again for watching this review. Take your time and you're busy. And I'm in busy schedule for watching another Richie Rich review. Stay tuned for more upcoming ones. Reviews will be coming very, very soon. Until then, folks, it's peace to the rest.